Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're taking a seriously cinematic journey into the microscopic world of reversed-phase chromatography, or RPC for short. We're going to visualize the invisible, literally shrinking down to see exactly how complex molecular mixtures get separated with absolute pinpoint precision. Step inside any sophisticated modern analytical chemistry lab, and you're going to find RPC serving as the absolute gold standard for molecular separation. Notice how these advanced HPLC systems operate, often glowing with sleek blue and cyan LED lighting. It looks like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, right? But this is real, cutting-edge science happening right now to ensure the purity and safety of everything from the medicine you take to the water you drink.
We've got a fantastic roadmap for the Explainer today. We'll start by defining this gold standard of separation, then we'll jump inside the RPC column itself, look at how we optimize the mobile phase, discuss a massive trade-off with mass spectrometry, explore how the industry is greening the RPC process, and finally, wrap up with some amazing real-world applications.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the gold standard of separation, demystifying RPC. So when we look at the definition of this process, the single most interesting word is reversed. Why reversed? Well, historically, normal phase chromatography used a polar stationary phase and a nonpolar mobile phase. But honestly, that setup was actually pretty terrible for a lot of biomolecules. Why? Because polar biomolecules just don't dissolve well in nonpolar solvents. So scientists essentially flipped the script. By inverting the polarity of the phases, they completely solved the problem of dissolving and separating complex, polar biological materials. It was a massive breakthrough.
Moving right along to Section 2, inside the RPC column, the molecule's journey.
To really understand how this works, you kind of got to visualize the inside of this column as a microscopic obstacle course. On one hand, you have the stationary phase. This consists of porous silica particles chemically bonded with these long, nonpolar hydrocarbon chains, stuff like C18 or C8. These act as a sticky obstacle course for hydrophobic or water-fearing molecules. On the other hand, you've got the mobile phase. This is a polar solvent, usually water mixed with something like methanol or acetonitrile, and it flows smoothly right through the column. So, the hydrophobic compounds interact strongly with those carbon chains and get stuck. They're retained longer. Meanwhile, the hydrophilic, or water-loving molecules, they rush right past on the polar mobile phase water slide.
This all comes together in a totally seamless four-step process. First up, the sample is dissolved in a polar solvent and injected. Second, the mobile phase flows through, very often in a gradient where the organic solvent proportion is gradually ramped up. Third, the differential hydrophobic interactions actually take place. That's our obstacle course doing its job. And finally, the separated analytes exit the column and hit a detector. This is what produces those distinct, colorful chromatographic peaks you see generated on a glowing digital chromatogram. But here's the catch. It's an incredible balancing act. The longer the carbon chain on your silica particle, say using a C18 column versus a shorter C8, the longer those hydrophobic sample components are retained. And while a longer chain gives you much higher resolution and separation power, it also means your chromatography takes a whole lot longer to run.
Okay, let's head into Section 3, optimizing the mobile phase, controlling the flow.
Look at the most common solvents we use in the mobile phase. Water is our highly polar base. But to selectively elute our analytes, we mix in modifiers like acetonitrile and methanol. Now, pay attention to the UV cutoff values here. In pharmaceutical quality control, UV detection is the absolute standard. Acetonitrile and water have extremely low UV cutoffs at just 190 nanometers, and methanol is just slightly higher at 205. This is crucial because it means they're practically invisible to the UV detector. It ensures we only see the peaks of the actual compounds we're trying to measure, not the solvent itself.
So, by tweaking this solvent strength, scientists essentially get to control the speed of our molecular water slide. If a hydrophobic compound is clinging stubbornly to the stationary phase, what do? You simply increase the concentration of your organic modifier. This lowers the overall polarity of the mobile phase and washes that stubborn molecule right out of the column.
That brings us to Section 4, the mass spectrometry trade-off, resolution versus sensitivity.
Often, to get even more control over that molecular water slide, we add acidic modifiers to the mobile phase. This suppresses unwanted interactions and gives us super sharp peaks. But method developers are constantly having to compromise here. Adding a strong acid like trifluoroacetic acid or TFA gives beautifully sharp, highly concentrated peaks because it alters peptide selectivity. But it comes at a massive cost to your detection capability. On the flip side, formic acid, or Fa, produces slightly wider peaks, but as we're about to see, it plays way nicer with the detector.
The impact of this choice? It's staggering. When you're using electrospray ionization mass spectrometry, adding TFA causes a massive 9-fold suppression of the mass spec signal compared to using formic acid. 9-fold! TFA is such a strong ion pairing agent that it literally hides the molecules from the detector.
Because, the stakes here are incredibly high. Let's say you're testing the stability of a vital protein drug during complex peptide mapping. Using the wrong acid could completely blind your detector to tiny, dangerous impurities or degradation products. You might have a perfectly sharp chromatographic peak on your screen, but if the mass spectrometer can't see the low abundance variant, your analysis is totally compromised.
Let's shift gears for Section 5, Greening the Chromatography Process, a Sustainable Shift.
Think about the sheer volume of hazardous acetonitrile and methanol waste generated globally every single day by thousands of HPLC machines. It's astronomical. These solvents have high toxicity, and they require very special, expensive disposal. This massive ecological impact is forcing researchers to ask a really critical question. How do we maintain the incredible precision of RPC while actually protecting the environment and the analysts?
The good news is, the scientific community is already testing some highly innovative alternatives. Ethanol is really leading the charge as a highly effective, safe replacement for pharmaceutical analysis. It's cheap, it's green, though it does have a slightly higher UV cutoff. We're also seeing the emergence of bio-based, eco-friendly solvents like acetone and ethyl lactate. And there's even wild research into using superheated pure water to eliminate organic modifiers entirely. How cool is that?
But there's no free lunch in chemistry. There are always trade-offs in method development. You can't just swap a toxic solvent for a highly biodegradable green one like propylene carbonate and expect your system to run exactly the same. PC is amazing for the environment, but it's thick. Its high viscosity causes massive pressure spikes in the column, which means you actually have to recalibrate your equipment or mix it with something like ethanol just to keep the whole system from overpressurizing.
Finally, let's wrap up with Section 6, Applications in the Real World, Why RPC Matters.
Whether we're talking about pharmaceutical scientists isolating purified peptides for vital drug purity testing, environmental labs analyzing pesticide residues and industrial pollutants in our groundwater, or advanced clinical laboratories performing critical biomarker analysis, RPC is the absolute workhorse. This molecular obstacle course is the silent guardian making modern quality control and biological discovery possible. It really all comes down to this. This complex dance of mobile and stationary phases happens right here, in these glowing, futuristic-looking laboratories. And when those separated compounds finally drop into their individual collection vials, they represent a safer drug, a cleaner environment, or a brand new breakthrough in proteomics.
It really leaves you wondering, doesn't it? As we continue to optimize this incredible molecular obstacle course, pushing the boundaries of 3D stationary phases, integrating greener solvents, and fine-tuning those holographic data displays and detectors, what unseen breakthroughs in medicine and environmental science are waiting just around the corner for us to discover?